Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Compelling Conversations podcast. Today, I'm really glad to be joined by Saif. Saif, thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, so I'm doing glad to be able to talk to you again. It's been a while, about a week since our last conversation, so looking forward to it, inshallah.
Yeah, likewise, likewise. I wanted to begin, Saif, by talking about I was skimming through the autobiography of Malcolm X, and he talks about how when he would see Cassius Clay, they would discuss how one of the most important things for a person to know is the true nature of the people around them. So we can't ever fully know the true nature of people around us, but how do you think we could perhaps detect some bit of it?
I personally have found, especially in my close friend group, that, and it's kind of hard to do with just a normal like person or acquaintance, but traveling has been a way for me to really learn about the people I hang out a lot with. So, for example, let's call my good friend, let's say my friend Ahmed, right? Ahmed and I have known each other for a long time, but we had fallen out of communication for a couple of years during high school. And of course, we knew each other, grew up together, but you don't really learn the true nature of people, I guess, as a kid. You don't register things as, oh, this is who this person is. And I think you have to wait until your later teens to really start understanding what the true nature means per person. And so, for example, me and Ahmed, we've traveled a couple of times domestically and even internationally once. And just spending time and talking about the things that are important to each other, you can really learn the nature of someone in terms of how they interact with you. So, for example, how they may answer your questions or how they react to something you say, even if it's something that they don't agree with. If you really pay attention to how people respond, especially in disagreements, that can really open up your eyes as to what their true nature is.
It was interesting that you mentioned disagreement. What do you mean by that?
Disagreements, so say for example, I think this is going to be very simple. I think Lionel Messi is the best player, right? But person A thinks Ronaldo is the best player. If I give reasons for why Messi is the better player, um, but if person A reacts in a very kind of like, oh, you're just wrong, you're this, they cut you off, stuff like that, then it tells me that they're probably not emotionally mature enough to really be worth having conversations with. Because, and you can see it in today's politics as well, is that we have become so accustomed to seeing argument or disagreement as a bad thing rather than something we or an opportunity for both sides to learn about the other side and maybe even take away some information from the other side that is correct and helpful to you. um, Politics today, we're so polarized that it's impossible to even, especially as Muslims, I would say, it's impossible for us to really choose one side or the other because they're so polarized. And I know it's one of the things that a lot of Muslim voters struggle with. So,
Hmm. Some people, when you're in their presence, there's something in the air. Like they may not be like a bad person necessarily, but there's some people just like, yeah, it doesn't work between me and that person. And then there's some people where it's like you're in their presence, like, oh, like there's some harmony there.
yeah.
And I was introduced to this concept by an aunt of mine where apparently before we all came to Earth, we all met each other, right? Before Adam and whatnot. And some folks are chilling with some people and some folks are chilling with others. So I think that's really interesting. And I'm curious, like, because of that, what do you think that means? Like something in the air between a person. Like two people might not necessarily be bad people, but there's something in the air between them. What do you think that's about?
I think it's interesting to think about because, to be honest, I don't know. But I would say I couldn't describe to you what it is, but I know what it like. I've felt it before. For example, like I said, my friend Ahmed, my friend Abdullah, we just click like that. Like we may not see each other for a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, however long, but it'll be like we just saw each other yesterday or we're hanging out yesterday. Whereas some other people, I'm a bit more, it feels a bit more forced, kind of. You can't really have a natural conversation. You don't really enjoy your time. Not that there's anything wrong with them or you. It's just the chemistry is just not there. That natural chemistry just isn't there. But I'm not. I couldn't. It's hard to describe in words.
Yeah, that's cool that you know what I'm talking about. In those experiences, do you ever feel guilt? Like, oh man, I don't know what's happening here, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I think I definitely do feel a little guilty sometimes because maybe it might feel. Sometimes I feel that I may not be giving it my best effort when in reality it's really just our personalities just don't get like they don't have natural chemistry. They kind of butt heads a bit, you know. But I wouldn't. I would say most people probably would feel guilty, but I would probably advise them not to feel guilty because it is just a natural thing. You tend to gravitate towards other people more so than others in any setting, right? Whether it just be as casual or even business. You know, there's some people, even though they may only have your business just because you enjoy talking to them, like the 5 minutes, 2 minutes interaction that you have every time you go there. You prefer to go there rather than another place, you know.
Yeah. And I wanted to point out, I like your energy, man. It's good energy when I like talk to you. It's
Thank
cool.
you.
You know, it's
I
cool
feel the
stuff.
same way. Thank you.
Oh, appreciate that. Um, do you think like people can change their energy? You know, like there are some people out there that are like bad people, like they have it
Mhm.
out for you. Do you think a person can change their energy?
Yes, of course. I think it's possible, but it's not a safe bet, you know.
Mm,
I think if you are aware that someone is not say for example you're aware that someone's not truthful, right? Whoever it may be, whatever setting it may be, you're always going to take whatever they say with a hint of salt, a grain of salt, right? You're not going to automatically believe what they say because they have this reputation or that you have this knowledge that they do tend to lie or not be truthful. And of course, they can start telling the truth, right? But once you know them as A, it's going to be very hard for you to know them as B. So I think it's definitely possible, but it's not probable because I don't think a lot of people tend to self-reflect enough to really feel the need to change. And even when they do feel the need to change, how much effort will they actually put into change? I mean, it's one of those things where it's always possible, you know, but it's really not probable. I
yeah.
feel.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting observation. I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I really like the choice of words you had. It's not a safe bet. One of the things that I think about is Abraham Lincoln. He said that if there was a person, I don't remember the exact line, but it was something like if he hated a person, it's like I need to get to know that person more. You know, and I
Mhm.
think that's interesting. And I feel like there needs to be a balance where you kind of like keep your distance, but also like there's that
Mhm.
optimistic engagement, I
Yeah.
suppose. And I think that requires sincerity. And
Mhm.
you also strike me as like a very sincere person. Do you
Thank you.
guard your sincerity?
Uh, funnily enough, I had this a similar conversation on the way back from Austin this past Sunday, and the way my friends described it as you as in me, you tend to guard your time. So not necessarily they didn't mention sincerity, but they say you guard your time, meaning you know who you feel is worthy of your time in the sense that you will have productive and meaningful conversation with them, and you don't give your time to people where you feel that you're not going to have those conversations. And then we also kind of went into when does that become arrogance, right? uh, and we weren't able to talk about it too much, but for the sincerity thing, it's something that people have said, but like to me in the past that, oh, you're very sincere, but I don't. it's interesting because I like as a Muslim especially, right? You act in the way that we're told to act, follow the example of the Prophet and stuff like that. So sometimes when people are like, "Oh, you're so sincere, you're such a nice person," it's like, "Thank you, I appreciate the compliment, but this is what I'm supposed to do, right?" So I don't for me it's hard to distinguish between me being sincere and me just doing what I was told to or recommended to do by the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So that's how
This
I
is
see
what,
it.
yeah. No, thank you. That's cool. This is what I'm supposed to do. I like that phrase right there.
Mhm.
That's really just what it is, right?
Yeah,
This is
I
what I'm
mean,
supposed
I
to.
think 2 weeks ago at the Jummah khutbah, there was a guy from Canada. I can't remember his name, unfortunately, but he told us a story about a taxi driver. A woman had came. She left a large sum of money in his cab. He found her or her purse, and he looked up her address, returned it, and her purse had a large amount of cash. And it became a whole news story. They interviewed him, and he said the same thing. Where, why are you thanking me? This is what I'm supposed to do. Like this is required for me to do. So yeah. So I think it's something people kind of maybe kind of I guess, how would you say it? Confuse sometimes sincerity for the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. And what do you think it is, since this is what you're supposed to do, what is it do you think that confuses a person to shift from that innate nature?
It's probably just because I guess this is gonna sound like a really like answer, but it's because of the way society is right now, right? Where people don't do the good things as often as they should, or they don't do the right thing as often as they should. So what I mean by that is, say for example, we'll use like a masjid example. Say for example, somebody drops a $5 bill. You don't know whose it is, whatever, whatever. What are the odds that someone takes that $5 bill and keeps it versus either giving it to the masjid or donating it to the masjid, like giving it to a lost and found? Maybe they make an announcement or something like that. Like, what are the odds? They're a lot lower. I think they're a lot lower than what they would have been a couple of years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years, whatever it may be. I think as a society, we're not doing the right thing as often as we should. And so then it becomes, oh, you're such a nice person for doing the right thing. No, the standard should be the standard of a person should be you do the right thing. Like that's for me is the standard, regardless, non-Muslim, Muslim, whatever it is. If you're not doing the right thing, then for me, you're not meeting the standard of what it means to be a human, like a person. That's how I see it. Um,
Yeah. And why do you think people deviate from that? Of course, the
I mean, it's a
spotlight
good
isn't
question.
on you, you know, it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
like, yeah, but just curious
I'm
to hear
not
your thoughts.
So I'm not entirely sure, but I would say it probably has something to do with living situations, right? I mean, the average American is not doing well. They're living, if not in poverty, near the poverty line. And so you have to really that into consideration when it comes to doing the right thing because they're looking out, everyone's so busy looking out for themselves, trying to do well for themselves in the present day. So I think maybe sometimes we can be a little selfish since we're looking after, like looking out for ourselves and our families. So maybe selfishness has a bit to play in that, but I don't have a like an actual answer for that. Be
Yeah.
good to talk to other people about it and see what they say.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's something that I think about a lot, you know, because I mean, I have that capability as well. I'm not, perfect or anything, and
Right.
I have to ask myself even like what happens when I like deviate from the innate nature. And one of the things that I was thinking about recently is that I released my book, and I really wanted it to be my magnum opus. I wanted it to be like a perfect piece, and that kept bugging me. And I felt like for the day I wasn't quite as um as cheerful about that. And so that made me think like, well, like if not having a perfect peace is making me feel this way, like not cheerful, does that mean perfection is the preference of the devil? You know, it's just something I was thinking about, like how like if we don't feel like we're our best selves, we might just end up living a bad day or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
You mentioned arrogance before about time. I'm curious if you could elaborate on that.
Arrogance about what? Sorry.
About how your friend said that you guard your time. That's a beautiful thing.
Mm.
Where was the arrogance in that conversation?
So, I actually ended up asking the question, but we didn't get too into it too much. But I asked the question, at what time does guarding, like at what point does guarding your time become arrogance? So for example, if I don't think I'm gonna have a meaningful conversation with person A, do I even bother talking to person A? Like
Mhm.
is that thinking arrogance, or when can it become arrogance? You know? And we didn't really get to talk about it too much. It was kind of just the question was asked and then we got to our destinations and then yeah, so um, but I have no thoughts or really ideas about it. That's why I was asking them just to see what they had to say. But I guess I'll pose the question to you. At what point
What
do you
is
think it could become arrogance?
um good question. The first thing that's coming to my mind is like I had asked some people one time like if a friend doesn't hit you up, if they don't like text you, like is it arrogant to like never reach out to them? You know, and I would say this, like it goes something along the lines of you first examine the sincerity in yourself, and it's like whatever happens, like whether they I guess you just don't really pay too much attention to the external factors. You just kind of look at yourself and you're like, well, cliche golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. And I think I don't think it's arrogant to want to guard your time. I think your time is important. And actually, it's really interesting. I feel like sometimes you need to like let go of people. And when you do let go of those people, you realize, wow, I was being held back a lot and I didn't know that. And sometimes like that guilt trip might come into your mind, but I think the results of doing better as a person with your time or whatnot, I think that suffices to get rid of the guilt, if that made sense.
Yeah, yeah, I think it did. It was well put. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd hope so. Is there a particular story that inspires you?
It's a good question. I don't think there really is. Terms, I guess maybe you could say like the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, but I don't have a story in particular that really inspires me, to be honest.
Wow. So what does inspire you?
I guess the sunnah of the Prophet, right? Just do the right things, be a good person on this earth, be successful in the next, that type of thing.
Huh, that's pretty interesting.
I would say like inspiration for me. Uh, I don't really draw inspiration from anywhere else other than like religion, to be honest.
Why do you think that is?
Um, it might just be because obviously it's not done me dirty, I guess is a good way to put it. It's never, I've always been done right by religion, right? So whenever I'm down or whatever, religion is what picks me up. And when I'm up, one of the ways I can stay up, especially emotionally, mentally, is to really focus on religion. So practice religion. So usually if I have like lows, if I have lows, religion is what picks me back out of those lows and to keep me out of the lows at the highs. Practicing has really been helpful in doing that. So
Have you ever experienced spiritual death?
yeah, actually, I have, and that's one of the reasons why I've started practicing again. So in high school, so I went to private school, Islamic private school up until eighth grade, and then all of high school I went to public high school. And in high school, I didn't practice at all. Like I wasn't praying, I wasn't reading Quran, anything. And so that was like the spiritual death that I experienced, where I wasn't doing anything and everything. And then a little bit after college started, so I guess right before COVID 2019, I was in a real low and I was kind of like, I really need to get out of this because this is a bad like state. So I started being more active, more social. And then that actually led, and then COVID hit, but being more social led to meeting different people at the Muslim Broad, actually. That was the real catalyst of me practicing religion again. It was, I met a handful of people that I really felt close with, that I connected with really well. And after that moment, it was just like upwards from like the spiritual death. So yeah,
Wow.
the last like 2 3 years, thankfully, have been a lot better for me.
Yeah. And if you don't mind me asking, because I've also experienced spiritual death many times, but I'm curious for you, what does that spiritual death feel like?
It's it's something actually that some of the sheriffs have talked about at Click before, and it's where you don't feel like there's a way back for you. You feel like you're too far gone. And anyone watching, like I want to state that like that's not the case at all, right? Like, there is probably no way for you to be too far gone. There's always a way back for you, and it's in Islam especially. There's always a way back. Um, you know, Allah is Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, right? So
Yeah.
you can't ever doubt the mercy that um, the mercy and the forgiveness that Allah can bestow upon you. That was the big thing. That was what I saw as spiritual death, though, was feeling that I was too far gone or I couldn't come back.
Wow. Yeah, there's this tyrant in Muslim history. His name's Hajjaj ibn Yusuf. And what I found really interesting about his story is at his deathbed, he was like, I'm so excited to meet God. And he said, God, the people say you won't forgive me, so forgive me. And I was like, damn. Like I'm no one to proclaim that man's ship to heaven or hell, but it's
Hmm.
like wow, like the sort of optimism there. It's insane.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. Yeah,
yeah.
spiritual death, that's a dark place to be, but when you escape, it's beautiful and you can look back and I feel like you can really be of service when you're out of that. Do you
Sorry,
think
what
you
you?
can you think you can be of service when you're out of that? Because you have a
Yeah,
new
yeah. I think you can be, even if it's just something as simple as volunteering somewhere, right? Like you just feel
Mhm.
um, more compelled, more willing to help others, right? Or even just spend time with others, even if you're not, being of service. You may being of service in the sense that you're not maybe physically helping anyone, but if you're talking to your friends, you have a conversation, something you say helps them, right? That probably wouldn't happen if you're feeling really low and not hanging out with people or doing X, Y, and Z. So I think being of service is also a very general term. And I think it's important for people to realize that you don't always realize the effect that you can have on someone just by talking to them. I don't
Yeah.
think people, I mean, we all hear it, right? Like your words carry a lot of weight, but it's hard for people to realize it until somebody else says, hey, what you said really either hurt or helped me. And so I think it's important to realize that being of service can be very simple and it can also be very elaborate or big.
Yeah, it's a very potent thing for sure. And this made me think of something that you mentioned to me in College Station, which was you're very okay with being by yourself. And I think that's rather admirable for a lot of people. And even in my experiences, sometimes what happens is when you're alone, it's as if your demons, so to speak, surround you. If you don't mind me asking, does that ever happen to you? And if it does, how do you push through that?
I think for me, the last 2 years, one of the things that have helped a lot is I like bouldering, so I like to climb without ropes on smaller routes. And so even whenever I'm by myself and I start to feel kind of overwhelmed with thoughts and whatnot, I will first get out of wherever room or whatever I'm in. If I'm at home, say for example, I'll leave the house, go to the climbing gym, climb, and even though I'm by myself, because I'm now focused on doing another activity or something, the demons, so to speak, aren't really there. Like they're not the main focus. Now I'm thinking about how am I going to do this route or how am I going to fix this problem or this or that, whatever to do with climbing. And then after an hour or two, you kind of forget about the demons, and then there you go, like problem
I like
solved.
that. Yeah,
It used to be like during high school and before. It used to be soccer for me. That's how I really kind of uh, relaxed, I guess, or like took a step back. But the last couple of years has been climbing for me. So
that's cool. I like how you mentioned this because I feel like, at least for myself, when I think of being by yourself, the way I do that is I'm usually like in my room or inside or something, alone. And the way you're talking about it is, well, you're alone, but you're in the world,
yeah,
you're experiencing the world. And that's a really powerful thing, being alone and experiencing the world. I think that's a really cool way to shape yourself. And I'm curious, how does being alone sculpt your character, you think?
I've never really thought about it actually. If I had to say, I think it makes you a better listener. I will say that for sure. I think you're more willing to listen to what people have to say because even just by sitting in a public setting, you'll hear a lot of things. You become a better listener just by looking around you, listening, overhearing people's conversations and stuff. And I've noticed that when I do have conversations with people, I still am very quiet. But I am always listening to what the person has to say. So I know sometimes some of my friends will be like, "Hey, are you listening?" Yeah. Oh, what did I just say? Or repeat it back to them, and then they're like, okay, whatever. But yeah, I think it does make you a better listener. It also makes you more patient, I think, as well, because you have to be you have to be patient with yourself. So if you're ever at a low, what I will tell people is that it's not easy to get out of that and get to your high. Um, but you have to be patient with yourself because maybe you're on a good streak and then one day you break that streak, right? Don't focus on the day that you broke the streak. Focus on, say, for example, the 5 days before where you did what you were supposed to do. Take the one day as like a break and then move on. Like, move on from it. Don't even think about it the next day. The next day, do the right thing. And then boom, 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 it becomes a process. And that's one of the ways that you can really help yourself break out of any sort of lows that you have, spiritual, mental, whatever it is. Any low, you have to be patient with yourself because it does take time and it does take effort.
Yeah, I like that. One day at a time. And that patience and that quietness, I think it lends you power, doesn't it? And it's not just any power, it's got a layer of humility about it as well. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, yeah, I would
So
definitely.
by that equation, do you think then that being by yourself is a good way to cultivate humility?
I think so. Um, I'm sure there are other ways too, but I found that being alone is a very good way to develop humility.
Yeah. And how about this? Being alone, does that give you courage?
If you're used to being alone, it takes courage for you to do things where you wouldn't be physically alone. So what I mean by that, if you're used to being alone in your room or whatever, it takes courage to leave your room, go to, just a restaurant, a Starbucks or something, go inside, sit, do what something for an hour or two, or even just going to the gym. It does take a bit of courage to make that first step. And even after that, it takes courage to keep continuing it, even if you feel uncomfortable. But like I said, you have to be very patient with yourself because building up the courage to take that first step and then also keeping the courage to continue on is not easy. It does take a lot of work and time.
Yeah. I like to think that, well, do you think tears are the crops of patience?
Tears are the crops of patience.
Because there can be a lot of like pain and sadness, but at some point, I think it pays off, right? So,
Yeah, it's like uh, I think everyone in this life will feel some sort of pain, anguish, right? You'll always feel down. Everyone will always feel like they're in a position where they'll never get out of, right? But eventually, right, we know if you put in the work, be patient, put in the work, you will get out of that situation. You will come out of it better, brighter, however you may put it, right? So I think pain does help develop, pain definitely helps develop a person's character. Struggle helps develop a person's character. It's like the common saying, what is it? It's life is always going to knock you down. It's how you respond to being knocked down. Like, are you going to get up or are you going to stay down? That type of thing, where it's like your reaction is what matters most to a
yeah.
situation.
It seems to me, from my own experience and from what I see, everyone's in a rush. Do you think that patience is the antidote to the rush?
I think so. Can you clarify rush? Like, what do you mean by the rush?
Yeah. Everyone's in a rush to do everything, and it seems like we're all in a rat race, you know? And so I'm curious, like, what is the antidote to that rush? Like, oh, I have to do this by this age or by this time period in my life, et cetera, et cetera.
The antidote. Patience could definitely be an antidote, but I think
Mm,
one of the biggest things, one of the hardest things for me to accept was that every person moves at their own pace, right? And so when I took a semester off to work and I wasn't graduating with all my friends, I felt really bad, like, oh, damn, everyone's moving on, this or that or the other. But then a good friend of mine, his father was like, look, everyone moves at their own pace. You did something beneficial for you, and it's only going to help you, right? So just don't be too focused on what everyone else is doing. Just focus on what you do. And once you start doing that, you'll feel a lot less anxious, a lot less worried about what's to come because you're not comparing yourself to someone whose situation is not the same as yours. Everyone's situation is different. That's why everyone's moves at their own pace, right? Everyone has different paces. So while I think patience can be helpful, I think it's also important to understand that everyone's situation is different and everyone moves at their own pace.
yeah. Brilliantly articulated, man. Thank you for that. There's this real world and then there's like this matrix, right? This
Mhm.
other frontier on the phones. You don't strike me as a man who lives in the matrix. Would you agree to that?
I don't know. It's hard for me to agree to that because but like, I definitely try not to be on my phone when I don't need to be. So, for example, if I'm with someone or a group, I will really try my hardest not to pull my phone out for anything, unless I get a call or something and I check to see who it is. Um, and I think I was a Boy Scout, and one of my leaders we were eating somewhere or something, and he said, "Let's play a game. Whoever pulls out their phone last wins, and I'll tell you what it means after the meal or whatever." Right. So person X was the last person to pull out their phone, and what one thing that he our leader mentioned was that if you are so obsessed with your phone to the point where you're pulling it out while having a conversation or in the presence of the people you feel closest with, that's an issue. So what it says to the other people is that, oh, my phone or whatever's on my phone right now is more important than talking to you face to face. So I've always, like, since that moment, I've made a habit of really giving the people I'm with, like in the group in the immediate area, my time and attention. It's actually, there's sunnah of the prophet is to, when someone is talking to you, is to make, like, look at them and turn your body towards them so they know that you are giving them your full attention. So I think that's one of the important things that a lot of us, including myself, should always really focus on doing, because it's only a good look, right? Giving your attention to someone is never a bad look. It can only look good on you. So why not do it, you know?
Yeah, I love that quote. That's great stuff, man. And I'm not trying to hype you up or anything, but I do see that in you. You know, when I'm with
Thank,
you, I see that, and it's good on you, honestly, for that. It's a very important thing. You know, I
thank you.
always love how the Prophet, peace be upon him, he said, uh, I came to perfect manners, and I just think it's so beautiful. You know, to meet people
Yeah,
with manners and stuff. It's cool. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, good on you again. But honestly, Slave, this has been a great conversation, man. You know, thank you. You really dropped some lessons that I have to think about. It's good stuff. I'm curious, do you have any closing thoughts? Anything that you felt like you wanted to say, you didn't get a chance to, or something on your mind that you wanted to express?
No, I think really just reiterating the point that you need, like, you as in anybody needs to be moving at their own pace. Don't set, like you said, you were saying, like, at this age we have to have this done by. Don't really think too hard about that stuff. Move towards, actually, in the khutbah today, Jummah khutbah at Click, he was saying move towards greatness, and greatness will find you, or something just below greatness, right? Will find you. And I think it's important to realize that just keep moving forward. Don't worry about how far you're moving forward every day. Just make sure it's just a little bit more than what it was yesterday. And I promise you, like, you'll see good things come from it, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. And there's no need to be embarrassed, right? Whatever
Exactly.
pace you're going at.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff,
Everyone's
man.
situation is different, right? So
Yes. Yes. Beautiful stuff. Thank you, Safe. I really appreciate you being here. It's good
yeah,
stuff, man.
I really enjoyed being here as well, talking to you. So
I'm glad to hear that. Yeah. Well, good talking to you, my friend. And I suppose until next time, inshallah. Eh?
inshallah. All
All
right.
right. Take
Assalamualaikum.
care. Salam salam.